never really. I was definitely more into the kind of sort of acting side and the music side than I ever was necessarily the dancing side, believe it or not. But I think for me, the attraction to Northern Soul was the pure appreciation and respect for music that really drew me to it. And then obviously the dancing is a huge part of that, because it allows you to go into a space where you're just completely you.
Thank you very much for doing this little podcast today with me, and we're going to be having a look at your career. So what we're going to do is basically go right back from childhood, and then we're up to present date, basically. Yeah, is that all good?
Yeah, that's good. I'll just have to get my memories organized in my head somewhere somehow.
Yeah.
But no, I'm up for it. Let's do it.
Yeah, cool. So you're doing great stuff like in the Northern Soul scene as well, that people that know you as well and know your YouTube videos and that as well. So we just want to just get a little kind of, behind the scenes insight to where you've come this far. So can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up? We'll start there then, where you grew up.
Yeah, so I'm born and bred Bristol. That's where I am at the moment, based in Bristol as well. So I was... I was born in Bristol and went to school here and everything. So primary school, high school and everything. I've never really thought about it really. Yeah. I mean, I went traveling for a little bit over the last sort of 5 years or so, but back in my hometown now.
Oh, cool. And did you grow up, have you got brothers and sisters, and it was just you and your mum as well, you and your mum and dad? What's the family life like? Yeah,
so family life was pretty much just me, my mum and my brother. Yeah. Me and my brother are super, super close. So we grew up sort of together as a sort of trio and everything. Cool. And, my brother's sort of 7 years younger than me. So I was almost, I guess, a little bit like sort of looking after him and stuff like that, sort of took on quite a motherly role. Yeah. So I sort of, still see him as my little brother, even though he's like 18 now. He's like twice the height of me, but I still see him as my little brother.
Still see him as your little brother,
yeah. So like we have so much fun together, and I love him.
Oh, cool. So a single parent household as well, yeah? Yeah, same here as well. And I think there's something about that where you're just saying that relationship with your mum as well and stuff, that you become even more closer as well. I know with my experience, like being brought up in a similar situation, a single parent environment and stuff, it does bond you a lot closer. And me and my mum are 100% really tight, and it is for the single mothers.
Absolutely, all for it. Like literally, it's and I'm super grateful for the way she's brought me up and the opportunities she's given me. And the life experiences that she's given me as well, like I'm super grateful for that. And the fact that me and my brother are so close as well is just really adds to all of that. And I couldn't be happier really.
Cool. So you mentioned we were just doing something earlier, and we was doing something for the TV thing we're doing, but you were saying about how your mum, sticking on the theme with your mum as well, how she was been a big influence of you getting into the Northern Soul scene and music in general. So was your mum musical herself as well and growing up? And,
she was an original soul girl back in the 80s. So she went to Stafford. She didn't quite go to Wigan Casino. She wasn't quite old enough to go to Wigan Casino, but she went to Stafford Top of the World, which was the other Northern Soul club, which doesn't get talked about as much, because after the 70s and Wigan Casino closed, the Stafford era, if you like, sort of brought Northern Soul really underground, to the point where they weren't even really calling it Northern Soul, they were calling it Rare Soul, just because it sort of had a bit of an evolution, if you like. So in the Wigan Casino days, there was a lot of sort of 100 mile per hour songs played, sort of 4 to the floor, sort of very Motown sounding songs. And when it kind of went into when people were doing stuff at Top of the World, there was a lot more sort of other sounds that were coming in, So the sort of slower sounds, even a bit more of the kind of modern sound as well. There was some modern sets there. I was recently just talking to someone called Ion, who used to go to the 100 Club a lot, which was obviously around the same time as well. There was some great 60s all-nighters at the 100 Club. And yeah, I mean, I've heard some great stories, but the music definitely sort of took an evolution, and that was where she sort of got onto the scene. She told me some crazy stories about you know, going up north and you know, spending all her money on all-nighters and stuff like that, and
wow, yeah,
you know, like cars breaking down, all of that sort of crazy stuff. But I mean, you know, in terms of sort of Northern Soul music and the Northern Soul scene, and I don't think she ever really wanted me to be part of that, because back in the 80s the scene was a very dangerous place. You know, there was a lot of you know, drugs and stuff like that. So as her child, I don't think she ever really wanted me to see or get into the kind of Northern Soul scene. I mean, I think now Northern Soul has definitely become a lot more you know, above board. You know, obviously with licensing, you know, you get the license. You know, it wasn't necessarily like, you know, an illegal rape, if you like. So initially, I don't think she ever really had any interest in saying like, yeah, I want to get my daughter into Northern Soul, because she saw it as a sort of place where there were a lot of drugs and a lot of unsavory characters, which there were, because it was the only sort of all-night scene back in the 80s. You know, so anyone who wanted to be up past, you know, hours of the local pub, you know, had to have some kind of like weirdness about them, I guess. And that's what makes the Northern Soul scene so great, is that you just get all these kind of weird, strange characters. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't really until I started getting into the more, I mean, I've always had a very deep appreciation for all kinds of music. I did musical theatre as a kid. And I was in a few bands as well. Music was my best subject at school. I always really loved it, and I've always used, you know, music and movement as a way to express myself. And it wasn't until I started listening to the more soul influenced bands like Amy Winehouse, The Heavy, a few of the Daptones, so Sharon Jones, the Duelers, as I said before, you know, all that kind of new sounds, but taking a lot of influence from the soul. It wasn't until then where she said, you know, if you like that, then you'll probably like Northern Soul. And of course, in this day and age of YouTube algorithms and stuff like that, I was watching these videos and it was leading me on to those sort of songs anyway. But you know, since I've been getting more into the music and more into the scene, she's definitely opened up a lot more about, you know, Northern Soul and you know, like her life in the Northern Soul scene and everything. So I guess it's kind of almost a way that we've grown closer, I guess.
Yeah. So
which is kind of really nice.
What was your band like as well? What was your?
It was terrible. Honestly, it was just a high school like band. I was the singer, and there were a few guys like on guitar and drums, but it was kind of rock music, you know, kind of cool. Indie kid sort of. Yeah. You know, and I guess that kind of, you know, listening to the rock music led me to the more kind of indie sounds. So, you know, like Liam Gallagher, and then obviously you go even more further down and Paul Weller, and then the Jam, and then the Jam, you know, down that sort of mod route, Quadrophenia, and then suddenly you end up at Northern Soul. And I think that is the case for a lot of people. So, you know, I mean that was when I was really young. I was in the bands when I was like 13 years old. So
yeah. A lot of the bands that you just mentioned then, and the style and the image, and a lot of them as well come from, you know, like there's a working class movement as well to that as well, with the likes of Oasis and stuff, where I know personally it inspired me to, growing up on a council estate and stuff, in a single parent environment, it made me pick up the guitar. It made me think, okay, these people can, you know, like they made it look so easy that you could jump on a scene and you can do it. So we would spend hours and hours in the garage, like proper sweating it out in the garage, and you know, like no windows again. It's the story of my life. Yeah, so and my mum was and saying that, going back to that support of your mum and stuff, and seeing something in you and then bringing that out, and she would let us rehearse full band, full band residential area, full band rehearsals and that. My uncle would come over, play me all the Beatles stuff and Lennon,
Yeah, yeah.
and then I got into Dylan, like Bob Dylan, and so it's like
It's where it all starts, for a lot of people. I mean, whether you're older or younger, I mean, even now, it all starts with, hearing the Beatles for the first time. I mean, um, I'm not,
yeah,
unpopular opinion, I'm not a huge fan of the Beatles.
yeah,
Everyone's going to be like, oh my
yeah,
God, like typing
yeah,
online,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it is where it all starts. And I completely appreciate that, it,
Yeah.
it starts from hearing a Beatles song, and then, especially with YouTube algorithms, it will push you another song and then push you another song. And then, it's kind of like this loop. But, even, not now with streaming. Back in the day, it would have been, picking up a record and then someone saying, oh, well, if you like that, and it all sort of being in the same record box and stuff like that, and discovering new tunes that way.
Yeah, going to a record shop and just having a bit of a lucky dip into a record shop. There's one down in Greenwich, which is quite a cool place, and you can just literally just go in there and I'll pick out some stuff and you've never heard it before. You come home and have a listen to it. Do you think that the mainstream is dying when it comes to terms of like investing in the artwork of a band, the history of a band, and an album, listening to an album as well? We obviously know with the social media and with the technology of how it's gone. So what's your views on that? Because obviously you're in a scene as well where it's keeping it very retro as well. There's so many sub scenes and stuff that are still there. You just got to look for them, right?
I mean, in terms of how social media has changed the music industry, I mean, it's changed it dramatically. But I also think we're coming full circle. Obviously, I mean, so it started off with streaming's almost killing out the vinyl, the need for vinyl, the need for CDs, MP3s kicked in. And then now obviously we have stuff like Spotify, which I think obviously at first killed that need for all of the kind of physical stuff. But I think people now are starting to really want that physical, emotional attachment to that record. So a lot of people are, getting records and stuff like that, or CDs or tapes even, to listen to these tunes. I mean, obviously, I think on a daily basis, streaming is just far easier. So that will never die out. It'll never be a case of, vinyl overtaking streaming. But I think people are really looking now to, picking up vinyl 45s and albums, just because it's something tangible. And I think we've gone so long not having anything that we can, it's all on the internet now, that people don't really have anything. They don't have that physical, attachment, and I think people are missing that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I was going to bring it back to the Beatles then and see what your problem is with the Beatles, but I'll leave that one.
I mean, look, I don't have a problem at all. I mean, I think, oh gosh, I'm going to get so much hate for this, aren't I? I feel like maybe they're a little bit overrated in some ways.
Yeah.
I think, there's some really, really good music out there, and, it's not just the Beatles. It's there's plenty of artists out there that are also overrated. But I do appreciate that, sometimes it takes listening to that to find another song. So I have a respect for that, But I mean, everyone's allowed to have their
without a doubt. Yeah, it's personal taste, and also I think love or hate the Beatles, the respect's got to be in terms of like the history of what they did with songwriting.
Yeah, and obviously the absolute cultural significance and everything. I completely appreciate and respect that completely. So no, I don't have a problem.
We'll move off that one.
Not
anyway.
at all.
Yeah. So, do you feel like you were born in the wrong era sometimes?
I don't feel like I was born in the wrong era. I feel like I was born completely in the right era, because as much as I would love to go back to Wigan Casino and experience that, and Blackpool Mecca, go back to those clubs and feel like what it was like when it, the first time round, when the scene was really, starting. I feel that I have a sort of duty to almost create and carry on the story, if you like. I feel like this is the time now, as sort of someone who's born in this era, to take Northern Soul into this era and you know, keep it going for the next generation and then the next generation, because the music is timeless, you know, it's generationless. You know, when you hear that song for the first time, and you know, it could be 50 years old, it could be 30 years old, but you're hearing that for the first time, and honestly it will never sound so fresh, you know. Because and I feel like Northern Soul really has that effect on people. So, you know, I think as much as it would have been great to experience those clubs, I mean, you know, there's, you know, experiencing it now is almost a different thing altogether. You know, it's almost like people will hopefully look back in, you know, 30 years time and go like, oh, you know, Northern Soul when it was in the 2020s and stuff like that, you know. So I think it's just kind of carrying on the torch, as they say, and carrying on the story. And I think it's, at the moment, I think it's a really exciting time for Northern Soul, because it's become so popular and so you know, in the public eye. It's very, very interesting to see, you know. It's kind of gone from being super underground and super cool, and now it's kind of coming up into the mainstream media, and it's very, you know, seeing some of these young kids that are also getting into it. I mean, obviously I'm young myself, but seeing kids even younger than myself getting into it, it was really something beautiful, and seeing them really make it their own it's exciting.
And what you're doing is inspiring that as well, you know. It's amazing. Going back to let's go back to your school band now, right? We're going to go back to your school band. You're playing Beatles covers.
Oh goodness me.
No, you're doing your music and stuff. So so as you're doing your music and that as well, so when did you first kind of like then get into, say, dancing as well growing up, you know? Like, what was the first moment when, can you talk a little bit about the first moment you got into dancing?
I'm talking like from a very young age. So from the age of like 6, I mean, actually, I tell you what, let's go right back. I know that there's videos of me at like 1.5 years old dancing on the sofa, like holding onto the sofa, holding onto the table and dancing. And, you know, like my mum would put on a record and then I'd be there like, you know, wiggling my bum and stuff like that. So I've always had this kind of way of using kind of dance and movement as a way to sort of, I don't know, it's always just kind of gone through me like that. And, you know, at 6 years old, I started musical theatre. And I did, you know, a lot of like school plays and stuff like that. So that was sort of, I guess, if you like, my first way of appreciating music and understanding music for myself was sort of through that, you know, singing and dancing. And then obviously as you grow older, you start to you want to find your own sort of sound, don't you? So, you know, I was getting to the age of sort of like 10 and wanting to, you know, hear like other tunes. I mean, I still remember a time where there wasn't even iPods and stuff like that. So, you know, the only sort of music I would hear was on the radio and on TV, you know. So it was very much whatever was pushed at me, you know. And it wasn't until you sort of like, you know, with the birth of the internet and you know, YouTube and stuff like that, that I could really start to discover my taste in music, if you like, and what I really enjoyed listening to and what really brought out the emotions that I wanted to feel. And obviously from being in a band, there was, you know, elements of, you know, listening to the Beatles and listening to, you know, the Rolling Stones and stuff like that. And then the Jam and it just kind of snowballed from there, really, you know. But literally from the age of 6, I've always had this want and need for kind of music and dancing. I don't know, it was just a way for me to really relax, I guess, if you like, and sort of really be myself.
Do you find you're more relaxed when you're doing your thing then, rather than, you know, like socially and like with you, if you've got to perform or you're dancing or you're doing a DJ set? Is that you're happy? Is you feel more relaxed in?
It is for me. It's my way of communicating with people. 100%. You know, even when I'm just having like conversations with people, you know, I'll be sort of, you know, using my hands. I'm going to watch this back and see all my hands are here, but, you know, I'll be using my hands to express myself. And I think, you know, I don't know, it's just my way of communicating to the world. I mean, I love, you know, when someone else is into soul music and we can like really bond with that. I mean, I just love it. You know, we've got the Bristol Northern Soul Club here in Bristol that I've been hosting over the last few months. And it's really grown into this community, and we all sort of dance together. And, you know, I think, having that has really like allowed me to like come into my own, and I really, really love that, because I've always sort of done it. And there's been times where people have like honestly like told me to shut up and stop dancing and stuff like that, because sometimes it can get on people's nerves, but it's my way of being who I am, getting across my point of view, and
Yeah, or
sharing that kind of connection with people.
Definitely, seeing the videos, you just seem so free, and the Northern Soul technique and stuff is, I imagine, is all about kind of the gliding techniques. So there's so much different techniques to it involved as well, and you seem to make it really effortless as well. And it's and when you watch yourself, when as say if I'm watching you, or the people are watching you, I think what they're getting from it is that this happy feeling that that you're putting out there, which is you're putting it out there, you're putting that energy out there, and then and that can be, that can actually still work online, as it's proven with yourself as well. People are feeling down, they're looking, they're going through some YouTube videos and stuff, and it just puts a smile on their face. That's
I've always loved making people happy, whether it's through performance or just telling them a joke or something like that. For me, it's always been when someone else is happy, I'm happy, and it really brings me joy. And so doing these videos, and when you hear comments that say they've been having a down day, and now they're they've watched my video and it's made them feel better. For me, that's like all I could ever ask for, really. To have someone say that I've had a difference on their life in a positive way. That for me is the best feeling ever. And I mean, it's a huge part of why I continue to do what I do, and for those people that really enjoy it and stuff like that. So it's
definitely for people's mental health and stuff. It's an amazing, especially in this day and age, everything we've gone through and that as well. And there's so many opinions. There's overload of news every second. It's all a bit doom and gloom. So it's really, and it's the same thing when we put on a show, the Jewelers Show. People have come up to us saying that they're suffering from mental health, and going to these shows is just for a couple of hours they can forget about their troubles and just really have a little skank, and it's like
it's all about connection. It's all about connection and feeling connected to the person that you're trying to be connected to, whether it's through a video and it's someone who's watching your video, or even just someone that you're talking face to face with. It's always about just feeling that kind of empathy and connectedness.
Yeah, definitely. It's like we were speaking before about having interviews and stuff. Like, I would prefer to do this face to face as well, because you get an energy of someone that you can't. But then it's interesting, like the pros and cons of, when I was studying music, we had to do an essay on pros and cons of the internet, basically. And this was like MySpace days. This is like before MySpace days, really.
I remember the MySpace days.
Check it out. Check my MySpace out. It's,
I was a little bit too young to actually have a MySpace, but I remember going to people's MySpaces and stuff like that. And I think ours was Bebo as well. I don't know if you remember Bebo, which was more of a social thing. Yeah,
I think I'm slightly older than you, because I had a MySpace channel with the band and stuff. We did all the Camden scene, and it was in the days of the Arctic Monkeys. I think they were the first kind of internet band, right? The indie internet band that kind of blew up through the power of social media. So what do you think the negatives of social media is, if there's any?
Oh, there's a huge amount of negatives of social media. Of course there is. But I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't have an opinion on whether it outweighed the negatives. I mean, the positives outweighed the negatives. I mean, the negatives of social media, certainly, you put yourself out there are going to be people that come at you and have an opinion about you, and that's an absolute given. And obviously you have to stay really, really strong in terms of mental health when it comes down to that. Because some people can say some really nasty things, and you can't stop them, because unless you turn your comments off. But then that stops the positive comments as well, which are almost a bonus, because it helps keep those people close.
And it was you was telling me before that it was your with your brother doing the skateboarding, that kind of like there was a moment where you was doing the Northern Soul dancing on camera, which was the start into all of this,
Yeah,
right?
it was where it all started. So we were on holiday. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Take a look at my house while you're at it. Oh, it's not going to go back how it is now. There we go.
Behind the
Ta-da!
scenes, look at that. Behind the scenes, there you go. Exclusive.
So yeah, I mean, that's where it all started. We were on holiday, and my brother was filming a few clips for his skateboarding, and
Yeah.
he wasn't landing many tricks, so I was sort of in the background, just sort of doing my thing, being my weird self, dancing on a slippy floor because, you know, I thought, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And my mum sort of panned over, and I thought, yeah, let's do it. Let's film some dance videos. Like, why not? Like, this is, you know, like a bit of fun. And so we overdubbed it to a super rare song which my mum had found, and it got a bit of attention. I think because of the song. No one had ever heard it before. I think it was only released on tape. So it's sort of like almost back to the days of having a cover up. A lot of the DJs back in the Northern Soul days would cover up their records so that no one knew what it was. And I think there was that kind of bit of a buzz again when I released that video. So that got a few I think it got like 30,000 views within a week, which was a lot for me. Like, I thought, bloody hell, this is like mental.
Something's happening.
So I thought, you know, a lot of people were asking, you know, when's the next one? I want to see another one. And I hadn't really thought about it, but then I thought, you know what, what's the harm? Let's do another one, put another song to it. And it was, you know, my way of sharing my love of soul music and sharing certain tunes as well. You know, like when I hear a tune, and you know, like when you hear a tune and you want to play it to your friend because you're like, oh, listen to this, you know, it's kind of, you know, my way of doing that. And so it kind of snowballed from there, really. And, you know, sort of every week I was sort of doing another dance video in a kind of famous spot in Bristol. And it wasn't until about the 5th video where I had taken a Pharrell Williams song and a Velvet Hammer song, which was like a classic Northern Soul tune, and I mixed it in with Pharrell Williams' Happy. And I danced down Staple Hill High Street, which is kind of quite a sort of it's not like the best place in Bristol. A lot of people see it as a sort of like, you know, it's kind of suburbia. It's kind of just on the outskirts of Bristol. It's not very, it's quite a deprived area, if you like. So it's kind of a very sort
gritty.
It was a very sort of what's the word, like juxtaposed. You know, we had like, you know, me dancing to Northern Soul coming down this street with kind of the kind of British characters that you see every day on the streets of a high street, you know, like little kids on scooters and stuff like that. And this old guy joined in with me. I think we'd done about 6 takes, and it wasn't, there was loads of people coming and going, and we thought, oh, that take's not very good. That take's not very good. And then it was about the 6th take. This guy joined in the background, and I didn't even realize he was there until my mum sort of gave me the sort of like, and I was like, oh right, there's a guy there. Right, okay, let's just go with the flow, like, you know, see what happens. But I actually thought at the end that the clip had been ruined. I thought, oh no, I don't know if I can use that. But we watched it back when we got home, and we were in stitches. We were absolutely like, we just could not stop laughing. We thought, you know what, if it's bringing us that much joy, like, fuck it, let's just upload it to YouTube, see what happens. Like, it's a funny video, let's share it with some friends and see what they think. And it honestly, like, within a week it got like 1 million views or something like that. I think it kind of, the first 3 days were like normal, and then after the 3rd day, I think that weekend I went to an all-nighter, and someone said to me, oh, are you that girl that dances? And I thought, bloody hell, like, that's the first time anyone sort of like said anything to me. They're like, you do realize you got like 70,000 views on YouTube? And I was like, you what? I was like, no, I honestly, I didn't believe it. I think someone had to tell me, like, bloody hell, you do realize you're going viral? And I was like, okay, what's going on? And I mean, it wasn't, you know, after that was when a lot of my success came, you know, releasing you know, CDs for Universal Music Group, and, you know, doing a lot of dancing for you know, brands such as like Diesel and ID Magazine, Moncler, And Strictly Come Dancing as well. I did a few.
You went, took the stuff out to the street and stuff like that. You did, and then you was you did the video that then a girl come up to you in the and you said that was the moment that you really
So I was at an all-nighter and someone said, you know, oh, you're that girl that does that dancing on YouTube, and I thought, yeah, bloody hell, like that's the first time anyone's ever sort of recognized me, if you like, or sort of, you know, come up to me and said, you know, like you do those, like sort of that recognition. And that was it. Someone had to tell me that I was going viral on YouTube, and I honestly like I had to look it up for myself, because I wasn't believing it, because I hadn't really sort of checked in on it, you know. I was already thinking about the next video. And it was from that video that a lot of my success came, like, you know, releasing some CDs for Universal Music Group and dancing for some brands such as like Montclair, and even some TV shows as well. You know, I did Mr. and Mrs. and Strictly Come Dancing as well. I did a sort of Northern Soul special on there. And you know, it's doing these videos has really taken me on an amazing journey, and meeting so many sort of gorgeous people along the way, you know, and having these amazing opportunities to you know,
and what
share,
you're doing
share the music.
And it's all from a place of like as much parallels to the Jeweler's story as well, of where you know the brothers were doing the busking and stuff, on taking it to the streets. And if you take something that, and also they kind of merged the dancing with that as well, you know, with the scar.
I love that video so much. Honestly, me and my brother have watched it like a million times, and like I've tried to copy a few of the moves and everything, I reckon. Like, I love it.
It's what we were saying earlier as well, where people can watch it and it makes them feel good as well, and even like on the high streets and that as well. And obviously, like a lot of people, that's how I come to the attention of the Jewelers and that as well. It's like it's an amazing story, and as you start growing as well, there's something a lot to be said about keeping your roots of keeping it all your authenticity and stuff, you know, keeping it from where you first started, because that's the thing that put you on the map in the first place, and that as well. And that's that connection. There's something to be said about that, you know, that connection that people want to see, that in the streets, that rawness. And I suppose that's what all the Northern Soul scene as well, from, you know, like from my research that I've done into the Northern Soul scene, was that kind of realness of where you had all these soul bands that were quite a little bit more polished, and you had all this great music in soul music, like, you know, Motown and all that, but these were bands that were just putting out demos, probably just demos, right? And the rough element, they were probably only not released, and they're not released or anything, but they're only demos and that. And then people are finding these that moment, probably the same moment we're talking about, you know, that raw moment, you know. So amazing, amazing kind of like start into it as well, and really interesting saying people coming up to you and you don't really, you know,
honestly, I had no clue whatsoever. I was like, I mean, I didn't even know what the term viral meant at the time. I had to like figure it all out, but yeah, I mean, it sort of came sort of really like fast. But
did it put a pressure on you? Would you say it put a pressure on you at all, like to put more?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You know, I think with it happening so far, I was still really super young at the time as well. You know, I was 17 years old. So I wasn't even old enough to, you know, go down to my local pub and, you know, buy a beer over the bar. But I don't know. I always felt like I have this mission in life to make people happy, and I think for me, I just was really enjoying the journey and the way in which I had a platform to share the love of the music and to really you know, make a difference, and you know, have a voice and everything. And you know, a lot of the tunes that I've put on my videos, you know, have then, you know, filtered down to the artists then, you know, also being known and, you know, getting gigs and stuff like that. And I think for me, being able to make that connection with the world and between people is really something that I myself, I mean, I'm super grateful for. But yeah, I mean, there's always been that element of sort of pressure of having to make videos and, you know.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Every time. There we go. Hold on.
Yeah, no,
it's like one of those clip-on ones, so it's like I keep knocking it with my headphones.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
Right.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I was talking about the, you know, like how, you know, there's always been that element of, pressure to make another YouTube video or to do the next thing and to always think of the next thing. But I guess I've enjoyed the challenge. It's been a challenge, and I've really sort of relished that. And it's the people who comment and say how much they like what I'm doing, and that they want to see more. That for me is the real motivation for me.
Yeah, you make it sound like quite easy in terms of when you did the first video and stuff, and you was doing the dancing and that. And you've already mentioned that you come from a music theatre background, right? And you studied so you would have studied like dance, right? Is that something you would have done?
I mean, there was an element of studying sort of dance and stuff like that, which obviously I've taken a lot of that into my videos and stuff like that. But I mean, Northern Soul is something where you have to, you can't take choreography and the mindset of choreography into Northern Soul dancing. Okay, so I've had to almost completely drop that, really. I mean, I was never really, I was definitely more into the kind of sort of acting side and the music side than I ever was necessarily the dancing side, believe it or not. But I think for me, the attraction to Northern Soul was the pure appreciation and respect for music that really drew me to it. And then obviously the dancing is a huge part of that, because it allows you to go into a space where you're just completely you and the record alone, and you can be in a room of like 500 people, and when you're dancing to a Northern Soul song in a big hall and it's just you and that record. I mean, that for me was probably the thing that really drew me to the music of the Northern Soul music and the Northern Soul scene, because that for me is something that I've always wanted in life, was to find other people that had that kind of mutual respect for really good music.
And is there techniques you can learn if somebody wants to like get into doing Northern Soul dancing? Is there like like the same, similar to me with when I'm getting into the jewelers and stuff, like I think we're quite similar in terms of if you're going to be doing something, you really look into the history of it and see the techniques of what they was using at the time, how they're playing certain things on the guitar with the skank and stuff like that. And it's there's a lot of people out there kind of like playing reggae and ska wrong as well. There's also like it's keeping it authentic as well. And the same, I imagine it's the same with the Northern Soul. It doesn't seem like you could just if you do dancing, you have to take time to go, okay, I'm not going to study this move now, I'm going to study that move now. And there's a lot
with Northern Soul dancing. I mean, it's probably one of the biggest requests I get is to do dance classes.
I can imagine.
And there's a lot of people out there that really want to learn to dance Northern Soul, and I've done a few workshops here in Bristol. And it's probably something that we might do in the near future as well, is set up some more sort of dance sessions and stuff like that. I mean, the key thing that a lot of people say is that Northern Soul dancing can't be taught, which is true. Essentially, the Northern Soul dancing is about having your own style and having your own way of dancing. That said, there is always that kind of very basic step, which is very much the Motown step. If you were to watch a Motown band and they're just or James Brown as well, and they kind of do that glidey step, it all comes from that sort of Black American 60s dance moves, the twist, the swim, all of those sort of dance crazes. It's Northern Soul was birthed out of that kind of Motown era, where a lot of bands, they were trying to recreate that Motown sound but were never quite successful, so a lot of their records got pushed to the back of radio stations, and that was kind of, if you like, the genre of Northern Soul was sort of birthed, through that kind of people trying to recreate that sound. So naturally, the dance moves were going to, be influencing the dance as well. It was coming from the mod scene. The Twisted Wheel was kind of the original Northern Soul club, they say, but it was a mod club, and they were doing those kind of 60s Black American dance crazes and stuff like that, like the Watusi, and so a lot of that came into Northern Soul dancing. And so there is an element that you can sort of learn it if you like, but there's always that, whenever I do a dance session, I always like to say to people that they really want to find their own style and their own natural movement, because when you are listening to that record, you don't want to think about the way you're dancing. You really just want to listen to that record and just enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're doing something as simple as a sidestep, you know, that's brilliant, you know, and it's just about building on that and creating your own steps as well, and your own tempo and your own rhythm. And
Yeah.
I guess that's how I see it, really. And that's how I always try to express, you know, Northern Soul dancing as well with myself. You know, I always try to put my own little spin on it, and, you know,
Yeah.
or watch my favorite dancers and try to sort of take elements of some of what they do and some of the moves
Yeah.
they do. But it's always been about sort of forgetting everything about what you know about dancing and just really using it as a form to just sort of
Express
be
yourself.
with yourself and be with yourself and the music, really.
Yeah. Watusi, that's Sam Cooke, right? Twisting the night away, as he says.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. I'm terrible at names, but yeah, the Watusi. There was the swim. It's Chubby Checker, wasn't it? Chubby Checker.
Yeah.
Did the twist, and what was the other one? You had the locomotion. You had what was
Carly
the other
Minogue?
one? The pony. That's how a lot of people would know. No, it's Little Lever. The Little Lever is the OG, isn't it? The OG 60s one. But yeah, I mean, you know, we've always, you know, even now we have dance crazes, you know, and I've seen a lot of the dance craze at the moment. There's a lot of guys doing Getting Sturdy, which is like coming out of almost the drill movement. There's a lot of like guys doing that kind of, like some kind of crazy moves there, which you can almost see the 60s influence in it as well, you know. It's kind of really crazy, you know. There's a lot of dance moves which are really dance cultures which all feed into one, you know. It's kind of very much like music. A lot of music comes from blues and soul. You know, you know, even rock music is coming from blues and soul if you come right back down to the roots.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier.
It's the same with dancing.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier. Everything's coming, like it goes around again as well. And I think people, you know, look back from, you know, and it starts to have a another life kind of thing, you know. Amazing. It's really fascinating. Looking into that scene. Would you say the Northern Soul scene is like competitive, because obviously they do Northern Soul competitions, right? And is that when did that start to come into the Northern Soul scene as well?
So Northern Soul dance competitions, as far as I'm aware, are relatively new. They weren't necessarily something that they did back in the 70s. I mean, that I wasn't there, so there could be, I could be wrong about that. But in terms of competitiveness in the dancing, it's never really necessarily been that way. Although I have heard that there was always that kind of one-upmanship in terms of when you're on the dance floor, if someone's dropping a backdrop or a high-flying kick, you always wanted to be the best dancer on the floor, because obviously it was a way of pushing yourself. I mean, it was very much, when I was in lockdown, I wanted to improve my dancing, and I wanted to see how fast I could shuffle my feet and stuff like that. So I mean, it's not necessarily, I would say, a one-upmanship between people, but also within yourself as well. You want to, when you really start to get obsessed with the dancing, you're like, oh, like I really, you see that move and you think, fucking, I really, really want to be able to do that. So you sort of, you practice in your bedroom and stuff like that, and fall on your sofa and whatnot to try and figure out how to do it and stuff like that, trial and error. But I mean, I wouldn't say there's like this kind of sort of battling in terms of
it's like healthy competition, right? It's
it's just sort of like you always just want to be the best on the dance floor. But then some people, it's also just about escaping and just being away from reality and just dancing. So sometimes you don't even think about other people, especially when you're at a nighter. So
all-nighter, that's like, all-nighter is a phrase where you hear a lot, and that's so that's literally just an all-nighter in these clubs and stuff, right? Is that
literally, like that's how we describe, like, so an all-nighter would be technically something which goes from, say, 8 or 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, or 8 o'clock in the morning. So like literally all night, and music is playing throughout the whole of that. But then also you've got soul night, which is if it's just a normal night, then it would probably finish around 2 a.m 3 a.m. So that's the difference between all nighter and night. But it's all one and the same. We're always dancing.
And the clubs are there's a main three of them, right? You got the Stoke, is it Blackpool?
Yeah,
Wigan,
so
Wigan?
I mean, there's so many events on around the UK if you want to listen to Northern Soul music. I'd probably say the biggest one in terms of very traditional Northern Soul is probably Stoke-on-Trent All Nighter at the King's Hall.
Yeah,
But we've got a few nights down here in Bristol. We've got the Bristol Northern Soul Club, which is at the Old Market Assembly, and it's a gorgeous venue with a balcony over the top, so you can
yeah,
see the floor. It's about 300 capacity, and we put on Northern Soul Nights there monthly, so it's every first Saturday of the month. The only one we're not doing is the August of 2022,
yeah,
but then after that is pretty much going to be running monthly every first Saturday. So our next one now would be 3rd of September. I'm not sure when this is going to be broadcast, but 3rd of September 2022 will be the next one as of us talking now.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's just a gorgeous atmosphere. Like I look, so it's honestly my highlight of the month, running
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
because seeing all these the people that come, we're getting a really young audience who are 18 years old. They're younger than I am, and they're coming in and they're loving the music. They're even knowing some of the tunes and being able to like sing along to the tunes. They're dancing Northern Soul, but
yeah,
also you've got people that have never experienced Northern Soul either, and they're coming for the first time. You've got people who've just ended up walking in by accident and thinking, bloody hell, what's this?
yeah, yeah.
And this
This
atmosphere.
feeling.
I mean, we've got a really nice community down here in Bristol now of kind of Northern Soul fans, if you like, and the
Yeah,
18-year-olds and stuff like that. They're really embracing it, making it their own. At the Bristol Northern Soul Club, we don't have the traditional values of Northern Soul in terms of a normal Northern Soul night. You would essentially not be able to take your drinks on the dance floor. There's a lot of sort of unwritten rules.
yeah,
In our club, we've tried to sort of avoid those rules just to see what happens. And I think we've had a lot of people who really just want to come and enjoy the music and sing along and have a dance. But I mean, it's just it's
yeah.
a pretty amazing night.
That's
And
amazing of how you can kind of
I,
like you've got a scene and stuff through for what you're doing and stuff as well.
yeah.
We were just talking earlier about passing the torch down and stuff and keeping it going and stuff. It's really inspiring stuff as well. So do you do DJing there as well then? Is that like
Yeah,
in
so
the clubs?
I've been doing DJing for about 5 years now, I think 5, 6 years. I've been, collecting a few records here and there, and sometimes people send me some records as well, which is really nice because I get to hear some new things that I wouldn't
Yeah,
necessarily, purchase. And mainly off of 7 inches, 45s, playing
yeah,
Northern Soul, but also playing a lot of other stuff. So here in Bristol, we've got the Bristol Northern Soul Club. We've also got Funk Addict, which is more the kind of funk side of sort of soul. So erring on the sort of James Brown, but kind of that real sort of hard hitting, heavy, deep
yeah.
funk sound. And we got a lot of
Deep funk.
b-boys
Yeah,
that come to that as well.
yeah. Some
So
funkadelic
that's
stuff.
another style that I do DJ wise. And we've also got the Modern Room, which is more like disco boogie, sort of the more modern side. And we recently just had Soul Sam down for that, which is amazing. Soul Sam. Oh, here we
Yeah,
go. And again. So yeah, we
yeah. That's really cool.
stay. Let me see if I can put it on here. Doesn't want to stay now, does it? There we go. So yeah, we recently had Soul Sam down for that, and Soul Sam is, if you don't know him, he's an absolute legend. He's like over 80 years old, and he has like discovered some of the coolest tunes known to the soul scene, and
Oh wow. Yeah,
he really has a collection to die for. And
yeah,
but he's still at 80 years old. I'd probably say he's one of the best soul DJs ever.
yeah,
So to have him down in Bristol was a real big honor. And to DJ alongside him as well was a huge, pleasure.
yeah,
He's just still so good at what he does, and there were like 18 to 20-year-olds there thinking, like, wow, this guy is amazing. And they were looking up to him and thinking, bloody hell, I want to be like that when I'm 80. And I was as well, like,
yeah, it's amazing, right? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's really exciting down here in Bristol, you know, DJing and putting on nights. It's we've got a lot going on down here. So you'll have to get down. If you're ever in Bristol, hit us up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. It'd be amazing. I have to practice my dance move first. I can only dance when I've got the guitar in my hand.
We honestly, we're not like, we want people to come and just have fun.
Just have
Like,
a
we're
good
not,
vibe. Yeah.
you don't have to be able to dance in a certain way. You don't have to dress in a certain way. Like, for us, we are all about, you know, inclusivity and just coming and enjoying really cool music with like-minded people.
That's really cool. Yeah, so I won't keep you for much long then, Lev. And it has genuinely been a fascinating insight into, you know, from when you started up until now as well. What else was I going to say? Have you seen the Northern Soul film with Steve Coogan at all?
So I've seen a few. There's two Northern Soul films. There was one that came out quite a few years back called Soul Boy, and then the most recent one, Northern Soul film. I went to the premiere, not to the premiere in London, but like the premiere in Bristol. So it was the first time that it came out in the cinemas, and I went and watched it there. And I mean, there's mixed reviews about the Northern Soul film, but I mean, I think it's, you know, generally quite a good introduction into the music that you would hear at Northern Soul nights, you know. So if you don't know anything about Northern Soul, in terms of, you know, music, there's a lot of tunes in there. I mean, I know I watched it having been on the Northern Soul scene, so I was obviously quite biased, but it was funny because my brother watched it, but he'd never been to a Northern Soul night. He was actually more of a mod at the time, and he watched it, and I mean, he loved it. You know, and obviously he's much younger than me. He's 7 years younger than me. So it was kind of interesting to watch it through his eyes, because obviously he hadn't been on the scene, and he didn't necessarily get all the references in the film to the scene. So he was kind of watching it straight fresh, you know, and I mean, he loved it. You know, he got really into the music after that. So, you know, I can appreciate that you know, it's a good introduction, and it could, you know, breed, you know, people into soul music, which is, you know, never a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the exposure of I've watched it myself, and it has got that kind of intrigues you to want to know more as well, like you just said as well. And I do believe there should be like a film as well of looking at the, you know, what's happening nowadays as well, because it was very much looking back from then. But I think a good idea is to actually, you know, someone to do a film of actually looking at now of what the scene is like now, and the likes of yourself that have kind of been influenced by your mum, and then you're doing all the YouTube videos, and then it's still got a life there as well, and it's still really interesting things. So yeah,
I mean, the Northern Soul scene is the Northern Soul. I mean, Northern Soul in general is so big of a subject. Really, you can't fit it into, you know, like a 2-hour, you know, not even a documentary. You know, it's so broad, and there's so many aspects to it, and so many characters. It's very hard to put that into a 2-hour film or documentary. You know, it's I would say it's pretty much impossible. You know, you'd have to have all the time in the world. I mean, even now it's so hard to come up with all the, you know, talk about every single bit of an aspect of Northern Soul that is you know.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's great.
And hopefully people have enjoyed a little glimpse into the you know, into the Northern Soul scene of our chat today as well.
I hope so too.
And like I said, it has been really fascinating and genuinely interesting. And thank you so much for doing this. What's looking like in the future for you as well? With where do you want to take this as well? Can you know, have you got any projects coming up as well? Or
for me, the future is simply, I mean, my mission is just to share as much of the music as possible. For me, it's the best music in the world, and it deserves so much appreciation. And I mean, it has had such a huge amount of respect and appreciation from, you know, loyal and dedicated followers from, you know, day one. And I just want to be able to carry on that, and you know, make sure that the people who deserve to listen to this music really get a chance to, you know, find this music as I did. And, you know, I'm so grateful that I've had the chance to experience the Northern Soul scene and to be a part of the Northern Soul scene. And I want other people to have the same opportunity as me, you know, because it's such a beautiful thing, you know, the music and the scene and everything, that I want other people to have that. So that's my mission for the future.
Yeah, nice one. So I can't wait to see what you do as well, going forward as well, and hopefully we do work together. I'll get down to those Northern Soul nights as well. That would be really cool. But
Yeah, always welcome.
yeah,
Everyone's welcome.
nice one. Nice. Thank you very much for talking to me today, then, and yeah, good luck with the future.
Yeah, and yourself, and yourself.
Cheers. Nice one.